Hey Tea Squad, it's Kirsty. Welcome back to Dropping the True Crime Tea. Quick content note before we pour. Today's story involves the murders of children and a serial predator. Please take care of yourself while listening. 4 victims. 2 steel barrels hidden in the trees. A man who lived under a carousel of names. For decades, one child had no identity, only a nickname. Recently, investigators finally spoke her name, and it changed how we see this entire case. This is the Bear Brook mystery, part solved, part still calling for answers. Picture a quiet patch of woods near a small New England town. Pine needles underfoot. A dirt track that locals use to cut through the trees. A hunter steps off the path and notices an old industrial drum, the kind you'd expect to see behind a garage. It looks out of place. Inside the drum are the remains of a woman and a young girl. The container has protected them from the weather. It has also hidden them from the world. Years pass. Not far away, a second drum is found. Inside are 2 more young girls. Same type of container, same method of concealment. Investigators believe the killer chose the site because it was familiar and because the drums would delay discovery. It worked. The location is close to an old store site that had burned down. Whoever placed the drums knew the terrain and felt comfortable returning. Forensic exams point to blunt force trauma. There are no obvious signs of sexual assault. The victims were placed with layers of plastic and material. Each detail points to preparation, planning, and an attempt to control the scene even after death. For a long time, the victims had no names. The adult woman was believed to be the mother of at least 2 of the children. The third child was called the middle child because she seemed to be close in age to one of the girls but not biologically related to the adult woman. Thanks to advanced DNA work and family tree research, the adult and 2 of the children were identified first. They are Marley's Elizabeth Honeychurch and her daughters Marie Vaughn and Sarah McWaters. The 3 were last known to be together after Marley's began a relationship with a man who used an alias. Friends and relatives lost contact, and years later no one could say exactly where the trail went cold. Their remains were split between the 2 drums. This case didn't just use genetic genealogy, it helped prove the method. The lessons learned here were later used to identify victims and suspects in other major cases. It changed how cold cases are approached, and it sparked hard but necessary discussions about privacy, consent, and the ethics of investigative genealogy. Let's slow down and say the names again. Marlise. Marie. Sarah. Rhea. Behind every forensic term is a family that wondered for years why phone calls stopped and letters never came. A mother who took her girls to start a new life with a man who promised stability. A toddler whose life depended on an adult's love and care and received the opposite. When we talk about science and timelines, we do it in service of their dignity. Relatives of Marley's and her daughters have shared that they always hoped for answers, even when hope hurt. Rhea's identification delivers both relief and pain. Relief, because she is no longer an unknown. Pain, because the truth is worse than the guesses. Rhea's identification instantly raised a new and urgent question. Where is her mother, known as Pepper Reed? Pepper is believed to have met Rasmussen in the Southwest and moved with him. After Rhea's birth, Pepper disappears from the record. Investigators believe she may also be a victim. They are asking anyone who remembers Pepper, anyone who has a photograph, a letter, a school record, or a stray memory of a couple with a toddler, to come forward. Even a small clue could place the pair in a specific town and help locate remains or witnesses. There is another thread as well. A woman named Denise Bodine vanished from New England after entering a relationship with Rasmussen under one of his aliases. Denise's infant daughter was found alive years later and was finally identified through genealogy. Denise herself remains missing. These cases appear to sit on the same pattern. Rasmussen embeds, isolates, removes, and then reinvents himself across state lines. Investigators are realistic. They believe there are more victims. Rasmussen traveled widely, worked jobs that gave him access to homes and tools, and had the skills and confidence to move evidence. When a person like that leaves a trail, it looks like burn marks, quick flashes in one town, then darkness, then another flash hundreds of miles away. Let's connect the dots you can use as a mental map. 2 steel drums discovered years apart in the same wooded area. 4 victims inside those drums: an adult woman, 2 of her daughters, and a second child unrelated to the adult. The adult and her daughters are identified as Marlise Honeychurch, Marie Vaughn, and Sarah McWaters. The 4th child is identified later as Rhea Rasmussen, the killer's biological daughter. The killer is Peder Rasmussen, a man with multiple aliases, a pattern of isolating partners and their children, and a history of violence. Rasmussen dies in prison for another murder. After his death, deeper investigation and genetic genealogy connect him to Bear Brook. The identification of Rhea triggers a fresh search for Pepper Reed, Rhea's mother, who is missing and believed to be a victim. The disappearance of Denise Beaudin remains unresolved, with her daughter located but Denise's fate unknown. Every one of those points is the result of years of collaborative work: state police units, local detectives, forensic labs, volunteer genealogists, journalists who kept attention on the case, and families who never stopped asking. Bear Brook changed expectations. It showed that identities can be restored even when traditional leads are gone. It pushed police departments to preserve evidence carefully and to revisit cases with fresh eyes. It started practical conversations about how to do genealogy-based work ethically, how to obtain consent from database users, how to protect the innocent, and how to communicate with families when answers arrive slowly and in stages. There's also a cultural lesson. Predators like Rasmussen do not look like movie villains. They look like new boyfriends. Handy men. The quiet neighbor who shows up with a toolbox and a smile. The danger is in the pattern. The pattern is isolation. If someone in your world is being pulled away from family and friends, if a partner discourages contact or controls money and movement, pay attention and speak up. Your nudge could be the thing that breaks the pattern. Rasmussen is deceased, so there will never be a criminal trial for Bear Brook, but if there were, the story would likely be told through the forensic match between the victims and Rasmussen, the alias trail that places him with Marlise and the children, and with Pepper and Rhea, the distinctive method of concealment and proximity of both drums, the behavioral pattern across states, including previous violence and controlling relationships, the lack of any credible alternative suspect who intersects with all 4 victims and the disposal site. Even without a courtroom, the public can weigh those same points and understand why law enforcement speaks confidently about the perpetrator. 2 requests tonight. First, hold space for the families. Say their names with me: Marlise, Marie, Sarah, Rhea. Second, if you have any memory of Pepper Reed or contact with a man using the names Bob Evans, Curtis Kimball, Gordon Jensen, or Larry Vanner, share it with New Hampshire authorities. A small detail, a workplace, a rental, a babysitter, a photograph could be the key. And for our community conversation, how do you feel about genetic genealogy as an investigative tool? What safeguards do you think are important to balance public safety and personal privacy? Drop your thoughts below, keep it respectful, and remember there are real people at the center of this story. That's our deep dive on the Bear Brook case, the barrels in the woods, the chameleon with a dozen names, the science that gave 4 people back their identities, and the search that still isn't over. If this episode helped you understand the case, please share it with a friend who loves a twisty true crime story. Tap follow so you don't miss the next drop. I'm Kirsty. Stay safe, protect your peace, and I'll see you in the next one.